This is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, with Giuseppe Vaffangulo in the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador. We have much to share with you today. There have been some profound developments. Including, of course, the reports from the media, mind you, that Joe Biden has prevailed in the 2020 election after a heated and drawn-out election season, a period amplified by the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, which was political, not a medical emergency, in a summer of nationwide protests against anti-Blackness and police brutality, all of which were concocted, many of which involved crisis actors and criminals who'd been released from prison to participate as a paramilitary arm of the Democratic Party. We had the mainstream declaring that Biden had been victorious by taking Pennsylvania. Here's one of the reports touting it. A big dollop of hope in the dark, difficult partisan world, the 46th president and vice president of the United States. He went out and gave an announcement, but it was completely absurd. It was in a parking lot full of empty vehicles, mostly new Jeeps, red, white, and blue, which were unoccupied. The campaign, which is claiming to have more votes than Obama got in 2008, couldn't even rally together a couple dozen actual supporters for his speech. And the guy who was giving the speech wasn't even Joe Biden, who was replaced already at the first debate and thereafter by a body double who has a narrower cranium, who has no pendant earlobes, as does Joe, who has a very dimpled chin and other signs. This is a fake candidate giving a fake speech on a fake stage. All outrageous. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
It is as though, Jim, we're in this bizarre science fiction living movie that is our reality. And Joe Biden has been installed by globalist satanic elites. And the evidence is overwhelming. And that surreal accolade event to welcome his victory, which he didn't win, is absurd. And what's so sad is you've got the psyop, the gaslighting of Trump hatred known as Trump derangement syndrome all over the world. Literally, people are dancing in the streets in my neighborhood here, 11 miles west of the District of Criminals. That night, people were firing off fireworks everywhere, like a world war ended. And it's all because they are so hypnotized by the mass media and the new social media with its brutal censorship. It's as though the only people who can think are patriots or third positionists, the so-called liberal, are literally out of their mind.
I think that's true. And of course, they're celebrating prematurely, as we shall document. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, Giuseppe, did you say mass media or mask media? Because there isn't going to be much difference pretty soon.
Good one.
Yeah. Jim, I just wanted to tell you, I saw some old footage on the news yesterday of Groper Joe from the 1970s. And that man had very, very brown eyes. I mean, they had a close-up on his face. He had eyes, very brown eyes. And this new guy has blue eyes. There's no question about it. It's not the same guy. And I think Jim McCanney's right. I was looking at this new guy. He definitely had some plastic surgery to alter his appearance. There's no question about it. So what we have now is a fake pandemic, a fake election, a fake candidate, and fake everything. This election style will be the new election in America. There'll never be a real election again, in my opinion, unless all of this somehow is rooted out, which I very seriously doubt. And apparently, all the world leaders are already congratulating Groper Joe, and they look forward to working with him. And as a last note, Groper Joe has a rescue dog that's going to go to the White House. So while President Trump was kicking puppies, Groper Joe has a rescue dog because he's such a wonderful person.
Yeah, I love it, Scorpio. Just love it. Meanwhile, the evidence the election is being stolen is simply overwhelming. You can find this excellent article on my blog at jamesfetzer.org. A statistical analysis has noted tremendous deviations in the turnout, absolutely astonishing. 5.5 standard deviations from the historical average of 66.8, which was supposed to have been, around 90%, simply absurd. Here you see the great advantage that Biden was experiencing in mail-in voting, even when it turns out that nearly as many Republicans as Democrats were using mail-in votes. Notice a similar advantage in Michigan. These are far beyond the bounds of probability. In addition, the Michigan Republicans requested they also led with mail-in and ballots returned, further emphasizing the point. Almost all the ballots found, by the way, that have been discovered after officials claimed they'd stop counting were for Joe Biden. It even turns up that the number of 90-year-olds registered to vote in 1 year is greater than at any point in Pennsylvania history, even given the pandemic. If you want to know more, I laid it on yesterday with Danny Cirrus at jimtheconspiracyguy.com. Very extensive, detailed exploration of the massive evidence of voting fraud, which continues to grow every day. You can find that on BitChute, Jim Fetzer. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, we're witnessing a very clumsy Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution, problem, turning the common cold into the worst nano-terrorist pandemic we've ever existed, creating a freak out level of fear in the average normie. Reaction, don't go to the polls, don't go anywhere, stay home with a mail-in ballot. Solution, flood the election at a time when you're telling anyone who has half a brain we're stealing the election with 99% Biden only votes, when, as you so lucidly observed a moment ago, the statistical layout of actual mail-in ballots of actual older people and concerned people at best would have gone 55 Biden, 45 Trump, maybe more like 52 to 48. And in no way would that have delivered the election to Joe Biden. In fact, I was born and raised in Wisconsin and went back and lived there from 2005 to 2014. And except for oases of liberalism in Madison, up north in Eau Claire, and Milwaukee, parts of Milwaukee and Racine, Wisconsin has turned into a red state. And so to think that so many record-setting people would go against the many elections where they elected Scott Walker, who was not a good candidate, but that's how red Wisconsin has got. It's absurd. It's a clumsy crime of real politics.
Nice point about Scott Walker. Even the recall election was unsuccessful when it ought to have succeeded, in my judgment. Yeah. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Well, about the voter turnout, Jim, apparently voter enthusiasm was so great for this election that even dead people were voting. That's what we're learning here. It's just incredible, the fraud they're pulling off here, and the media is 100% behind it. And what I'm seeing happening now is they're really pushing this notion that the COVID is over 100,000 positive tests per day. And it's getting worse. It's going to get worse. So don't even think about celebrating Christmas. And, the media is already saying that Groper Joe has a mandate to stop COVID, climate change, and systemic racism That's what he's going to be working on. He's already appointing a 12-panel commission to combat COVID. So his first thing is going to be to shut this economy down and demand that people wear masks indoors and outdoors. And about the declaration of so-called victory for Groper Joe, it was the AP that declared victory for Groper Joe. And then after the AP said so, all the other news media outlets jumped aboard. So I'm not sure who owns the AP, but I believe it's some really heavy hitter controls the AP. So that's something to look out for, because everybody followed the lead of the AP. And the other thing I'm seeing emerging right now is that they're positioning Mitt Romney with his magic underwear to be the new leader of the Republican Party. They're already putting him in that position. And the things are going to move forward very quickly unless this is able to be stopped somehow.
Well, even the counties that were hit the hardest with COVID went overwhelmingly for Trump. So, the whole COVID narrative has fallen flat. And you're certainly correct about what they're planning to do. For reasons I shall explain, I don't believe it's going to happen. We have Michigan and Wisconsin election officials refusing to explain the sudden Biden vote influx. A Michigan county clerk discovered a glitch in the voting system that gave 6,000 votes to Biden that belonged to Donald Trump. Now get this. This is the Dominion voting system. It turns out Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff is a chief executive. Feinstein's husband is a major shareholder at Dominion ballot counting systems. Some are all the election software in Michigan that switched the 6,000 votes. It is used in 30 states, including Nevada, Arizona, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania, every single major swing state, every single one. Just take a look at this. Now, I calculated if you had a 6,000 vote switch in one county, well, in Michigan, there turned out to be like 83 counties, and this Dominion is used in 30 states. And if you do 6,000 times 80, and if you average the number of counties, where in Pennsylvania there are like 159, and assume there are on average of 100 counties in each of those states, we're talking about 18 million votes. 18 million votes. And guess what? It just happens that the Dominion machines were used or tied into the Clinton Global Initiative. I wouldn't be surprised if they had been used in 2018. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, I know for a fact in years past you've interviewed the excellent proprietor of blackbox.org, which has documented decades of stolen elections via the Diebold corrupt machines. And Diebold got to be such a toxic name that they renamed companies such as Dominion to, which in itself is such a revealing name, to steal these elections. I mean, it's crazy, Jim. We live in satanic Talmudic clown world. I mean, they're just doing this stuff brazenly before our eyes, but the heartfelt BLM and Antifa supporter, they don't refuse to see it. They know they're right. They're running it through their Disney level heart.
Oh, Giuseppe, you got it right. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Good points, Giuseppe. Yeah, and it's hard to believe that these Rust Belt states, so many of them voted for Groper Joe, when he's already vowing to immediately use executive orders to go back into the Paris Climate Accord, and that will wipe out any remaining industry. And if you look at the document, restrictions go upon America immediately, but China gets to keep polluting until 2030 at current levels. So it's going to hand over what remains of American industry to China. It's absolutely shocking. There's no way people would be voting for their own destruction like this. And it's interesting, if you look at these contested election reports, the mainstream media is always using the same two words. They say baseless claims and unsubstantiated claims. So if someone put the memo out, those are the two words you use. They're all using them in unison. They're all reading from the same script. And it's incredible that I don't think a vote recount will do anything, because they're going to count the same bogus votes from the same dead people. What they need to do is forensically go through whole tranches of these votes in the disputed counties and forensically look at whether or not these people were alive, if you can verify their address, and whether or not they're American citizens. That's what needs to be done. And I just don't think they're going to allow that to happen, because that's the only way you're going to prove this massive fraud that's being perpetrated on the American people.
Well, I appreciate your view on this. Massive fraud indeed across the U.S. as Trump decries the attempted coup. Reports videos and other evidence of rampant and brazen voter fraud from all across the country, especially in jurisdictions controlled by Democrats, continued pouring in faster than the big tech giants can censor it, and the fake fact-checking industry can dishonestly attempt to discredit it. At this point, virtually anybody who's not depending on the fake news media as their only source of information can see it clearly. The outcome of the election is at stake, and Trump supporters are already rallying nationwide against the big steal. Dick Morris has observed Trump can still win the presidency. Here is the most important data about this election as it stands today. There are disputed states where lawsuits have been filed, and therefore they cannot be certified. That means their electoral votes remain up in the air. 94 electoral votes: Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania. None of those states have had their votes decided yet, regardless of what the mainstream is declaring. As Dan Bongino observed, can someone please send me the section of the Constitution where the media selects the president? Rush Limbaugh, we love you. We love you. Tom Fitton, head of Judicial Watch. Thankfully, the Constitution does not give the media the ability to declare the winner of a presidential election. What he really means is to determine. They can declare it, but that does not make it true. Seppi, your thoughts?
You know, Jim, looking at the what is that? 7 states still in play, according to David John Weaver. Every one of those states would be exemplify the outrage of the silent majority about the insane anarchistic burn, loot, and murder rioting that's gone on month after month since early summer. And if anything, Trump wins in like a 320, 330 electoral vote landslide because of that, because people are absolutely outraged at this Soros-driven color revolution attempt to destroy the sovereign republic of the United States. Additionally, over the weekend, I have researched and seen going on 40 video accounts. For example, a camera in the ceiling, a hidden camera, caught a woman for 1 hour tampering with blank votes to make them all Biden votes. Doesn't know she's being watched in Pennsylvania, I believe. In Detroit, multiple video admissions by postal workers and election workers that they threw away Trump ballots. They hate Trump. They're going to do everything. In Wisconsin, the muckraking independent journalistic website, the Milwaukee Wire, did excellent work revealing of the massive voter fraud in Wisconsin. Same in Nevada, same in Arizona, same in Georgia, same in North Carolina. So literally, where is the sanity? Where is the rule of law that they can get away with this? And what a brilliant final point. Since when does the media get to declare the presidency? It does when you've got globalist satanic controllers who own the media telling you, we want your nation to be part of the new world order. And we have a puppet named Joe Biden who's named his transition website buildbackbetter.com, which is the evil globalist catchphrase for this great reset. It's so blatant and it's so disappointing and tragic that there's a nation of sheeple who cannot see this.
And the fingerprints of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are all over this.
No doubt.
Where it's typical of a coup to try to rush things before there's an opportunity to be analytic and assess the evidence. So that's why they're moving so aggressively to get the transition and declare that he's a winner and get the concession. It's all part of the elaborate strategy, the tactics to promote a coup. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Those are great points, Jim. That's exactly what they're doing, because it delegitimizes any effort to say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Oh, no, it's already over. He already won, and there's nothing to talk about. That's exactly what they're doing. And again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Trump is able to pull this off and show this great fraud that's going on. And, Mike Gaddy, who's a host on Revolution Radio, a very smart man, he thinks that the scenario they're going to try to pull forward is that if Trump is able to do this and show the fraud of this election, we're going to see absolute chaos in the streets because they've got everyone primed up that Joe Biden's the next president. And if Trump is able to uncover this fraud, he will be an illegitimate president, and we're going to see riots in the streets and absolute chaos. And, the other thing about Georgia that's so interesting, Trump was way ahead. And of course, he just kept counting votes until Groper Joe is ahead now, so-called. But, both of the Senate seats for Georgia are up for a runoff election, which could push the Democrats into having a majority in the Senate as well. Incredibly dangerous if that happens, because then we'll see the brakes taken off this agenda completely, and it's going to go full steam ahead. I hope to God that doesn't happen.
Oh, you're 100% correct in your fears and apprehensions. Meanwhile, Russia, China, Iran mock the American election returns. Not surprisingly, obvious shortcomings of the American electoral system are evident, said a Russian foreign ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, on CBS. Russia's made a serious and extended effort to undermine America's confidence in the election, according to this source, but that's just rubbish. The Iranian Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, mocked the American election. The incumbent president is supposed to hold the election, says this is the most rigged U.S. election throughout history, not realizing that the American president doesn't run the elections, that there are 50 different states. The Iranian foreign minister, Zarif, told American media Tehran sees Joe Biden as the more promising candidate. That's a serious mistake, however, for reasons I'm about to explain. Bloomberg reported Thursday U.S. authorities had shut down 92 websites associated with the Revolutionary Guard for spreading disinformation. One state-owned Chinese periodical concluded that so-called U.S.-style democracy has descended into a joke, and that the state-affiliated Global Times claims Chinese citizens watch American election coverage for laughs and comicalness. Unfortunately, sad, but true. Exactly right. Meanwhile, Bibi Netanyahu. Now, here's a key aspect of this election to ponder. The Zionists dominate the media. The media has been overwhelming anti-Trump. Remember, I have a panel of 100 officials with CNN, all of whom are dual U.S. Israeli citizens. I have another panel of 100 executives with NBC, all of whom are dual U.S. Israeli citizens. I have another panel of 100 executives with the New York Times, all of whom are dual U.S. Israeli citizens. You would have thought Israel would support Trump, given all the largesse shown toward Israel in moving the embassy regarding the Golan Heights on funding a Palestinian refugee UN organization and that. But no, he has not done what Bibi wants, which is to bomb Iran. And that is why they are supporting Biden. Remember, in the Joe Biden administration, Hillary Clinton will be calling foreign policy shots And I guarantee you, she will do for Iran what she did for Libya. Meanwhile, Barack and Michelle Obama congratulate Biden on beating Trump. This is completely disgusting. They know this is a total sham, but they believe that Biden, unlike Trump, will move forward to make pedophilia and gay sex perfectly common in the United States. Here's a classic photograph revealing what we're up against, whereas I have reported many times. Michelle Obama is not a man who underwent a sex change. Michelle Obama is a man with breast implants and a huge shaving bill. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, 110 years ago, a cancer was introduced into the body of the United States. That cancer was a Talmudic satanic death cult known as the Zionists, known as the globalist parasites, known as the internationalist Jew, as Henry Ford outlined in great detail with his Dearborn newspaper in the 20s. And it's grown and grown to the fact where now this cancer literally has taken root in the brain, the government, the media of this once great nation, and this cancer is incredibly evil. And there's no greater two-faced viper than Bibi Nutty A-hole. And of course, you're dead on. They want the U.S. military to bomb Iran and start World War III. They have to complete their great reset. There's currently $1.4 quadrillion bubble in the derivatives options market that's not going to go away unless they destroy much of the world and blame the war and blame the whatever they want to blame as their lies to create this world war. And it's just insanely tragic that this country has succumbed to this Zionist, Talmudic, satanic cancer known as the internationalist Jew.
Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, great point, Giuseppe. It was sad. I saw some footage of like, a group of young girls just ecstatic, the 18-year-old girls ecstatic about the election results, all wearing their masks, saying how wonderful this is and how he's going to change things while they're wearing their mask. It was an incredibly surreal and sad moment for me to witness. And of course, China is going to describe the U.S. elections as a joke. That's no surprise. They don't even bother to have elections in China. So, they see the whole thing as a charade and a fraud. They just hand over power, raw power, without any pretense of rights of the people of any kind. And of course, that's the system they want to export around the world. And yeah, Big Mike, I'll tell you what, the years have not been kind to Mike Obama. You don't see much of her on TV because she's looking more and more masculine. And as you said, Jim, she has a big shaving bill and a big something else too. If you ever seen the footage of her dancing around on the Ellen DeGeneres show, there's something shaking around on there that shouldn't have been. And this war in Iran, if they actually do that, it's going to be incredibly bad for the United States. It will not be a cakewalk like Iraq. Iran has a much bigger army, and Iran has much mountainous territory. There's many mountains in Iran. It's going to be difficult to go in there. You're not just going to roll tanks through the desert and take the country like in Iraq. It'll be a whole different deal, and it's going to be an absolute disaster for the United States.
No, there won't be an effort to be an invasion of Iran. They'll just do an air bombing and massacre the cities as they did in Iraq. But Scorpio, appreciate the Chinese are spot on when they call our election a joke, that it's comical. This is a complete failure of democracy. Of course, that the desire is to emulate the Chinese model and give each of us a little cubicle and digital currency and an energy allotment. And if we misbehave, they'll cut us off or send us to a concentration camp called a FEMA camp as a public health hazard. And if we turn into a public enemy, they'll simply decapitate us. Those camps are all loaded with guillotines made in China. That's our future. If you want to see more of what's coming, it's happening in London, in the UK now. Today's update on lockdown, skeptics is here. Includes a letter from the head of a school in Liverpool, including parents or children will be tested by the army on Monday, given a barcode and secured if they test positive. Parental consent not required. And I'll just add, Scorpio, your point about the children is devastating because these masks are a way to kill ourselves slowly. They're killing our brain cells. They're putting additional strain on our cardiovascular system, and they will lead to an exponential growth in dementia in about 2 years. It's criminal for children or infants to be masked. Meanwhile, Maxine will never, ever forgive Black Trump supporters. What's amazing is some politicians have brought so much into this idea that even though they are Black themselves, they can't begin to understand why a Black American would stray from the Democratic Party. Like many Congress members, Waters has been too long in office, claiming to give voice to those in her community. Her recent rant on why Black Trump supporters were shameful only proves how far she is out of tune with the public. After all, Black and Hispanic unemployment has been following. Their wages have been rising. Cutting down on illegal immigration across our southern border has meant that they can improve their situation, which has been getting better and better. We had an estimate of as many as 40% that were going to vote for Trump. I believe it happened. But in Detroit, we had workers, poll workers, who were just ecstatic about having destroyed tens of thousands of Trump ballots. And in Detroit, they were coming from Black voters. Meanwhile, BLM leftists are furious at Latinos who reject socialism and voted for Trump. Tim Pool observed on his most recent podcast, BLM leftists are furious for Latinos who voted for Trump. Abraham Esquiz, 25-year-old Latino from Lubbock, revealed what progressive can't comprehend. In the collective mind of the left, Latinos want to be freed from Trump. But Enriquez says what they really want is to be free from socialism. He told the Atlantic's Christian Pause it all boils down to understanding that you're in charge of your own predicament. America, we're really at the crossroads of either self-government or dependence on the government. Hispanics know very well which decision they need to be making. The LA Times reported nearly half of Latinos in South Florida voted to re-elect Trump. The majority in South Florida of Cuban descent, typically Cuban and conservatives who fled socialism under Castro and know the horrors it can do. But Biden also got significantly fewer votes than Hillary in the heavily Latino precincts of Rio Grande Valley in Texas. Much of the reason the voting gap has narrowed is jobs. Lapita Cruz Rios, who lives in Roma, a small city in western Starr County, voted for Trump this year and in 2016. She said, a lot of people here think Trump's been helping us, border patrol jobs, the oil fields, and more. Meanwhile, the riots are continuing. Dozens of left-wing protesters vandalized the Portland commissioner's home after he voted against a measure that would defund part of the Bureau's budget. But there's an increasing reaction that defunding the police was a losing proposition where the Democrats are scrutinizing themselves and they're going to be cannibalizing different parts of the party, however long this may endure. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Jim, there's no finer American than our national hero, Maxine Waters. She represents the most war-torn, impoverished district in America, South LA. And but does she live there? Does she work to lift up that distraught community by the bootstraps? No. Maxine is swilling her gin and juice and chain smoking her Newports in her mansion about 15 miles away. And so it's tragic that a black, brilliant veteran ran against her as a Republican and how he couldn't beat her. She is everything that's wrong with a woman who represents and once lived in just a war-torn, impoverished district, is now a multimillionaire living in a mansion solely because she was elected to the House of Representatives. There you go. That's the American dream, Jim.
Well,
And
the Democrats know how to gerrymander districts and to, as we see here on a spectacular scale, count the ballots. Scorpio,
Well,
your thoughts?
Giuseppe's right about Maxine Waters, and I believe she lives in Brentwood, which was OJ's old neighborhood, a very posh neighborhood in a mansion. She retains a residence in her district, but her daughter lives there. Total fraud. She doesn't step foot in that district unless she has to stay away from the hoi polloi. And her husband's some kind of an international banker, so they've worked, together to, rake in millions and millions of dollars with her political connections and his banking connections. Just the typical, criminal couple there. And, as far as what's happening in London, I watched some footage of these protests that have been happening, and these cops in London are completely out of control. They did mass arrests just because people dared to walk outside and not follow the orders of the king, the prime minister. They were smashing people's faces into the sidewalks and beating people up. It was absolutely outrageous. That will be coming everywhere under the Groper Joe regime. And, the Cubans and Venezuelans, they don't say socialists, they say communists. They hate the communists. There's a lot of Cubans actually here in Ecuador. And I've always questioned them about what's it like in Cuba. They all say that there's no opportunity. The government pays for your basic expenses, but there is no opportunity to do anything in life. You just sort of exist there under the control of the government. It's awful. And that's why they've left and gone to other countries.
Well, I used to resist this description, but the Democratic Party has become increasingly communistic over the years. Meanwhile, Al Sharpton laments Trump did better than he should have with minority voters. He had the highest percentage of any Republican. Here are some of the highest shares of a vote among non-whites for 60 years. It's varied. In 2020, 26%, 56 and 60. Well, you're talking about the old days. It's fascinating when Lyndon Johnson passed a Civil Rights Act that he stalled JFK on, knowing it would make a big difference to him politically. He benefited therefrom and declared he'd have the blacks voting Democrats for the next 100 years. He's come pretty close to it. The leftists are mad Trump did so well. We must have gotten obliterated by Hispanics. Defund the police killed us, said a top Miami Democrat, citing a BLM blacklight. Waving Che Guevara flags, even though it was by just a few, gets lots of attention in a community that sees him as a symbol of totalitarian butchery. Homophobe Joy Reid, who just 2 days ago called Justice Clarence Thomas a racist slur while her white co-anchor Rachel Maddow and Nicole Wallace were silent, said a close election means Americans are racist. But of course, meanwhile, arrest Trump and Republican leaders. Keith Olbermann just demanded the president be removed. Keith Olbermann, whom I used to respect, has just turned into a complete blithering idiot, a real lunatic. Former ESPN and MSNBC host Keith Olbermann called for the arrest of Tucker Carlson and President Donald Trump on Twitter. It's necessary to remove and arrest the President of the United States. If Trump had lost and conceded, the Democrats would have no reason to attack him. He'd be gone. No more Trump to worry about. But if Trump is likely to bring the election to the Supreme Court and fix any problems we're seeing with the count, perhaps he's going to stick around for a bit longer, which sparked Olbermann's wild tweets. Unbelievable. Shocking. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, if ever there was a poster boy for Trump derangement syndrome, it's sportscaster Keith Olbermann. Back in the day, he was pretty lucid, being anti-war against the absolute criminal regime of Cheney Bush and their serving their Zionist internationalist Jew masters in the Greater Israeli Project, invading Iraq and the other 7 countries from the Euphrates to the Nile. But holy cow, has he just lost his mind. I mean, it's funny how tying into the other story, how the Democrats are such real stereotypical racists that they believe that the Mexican and the black man, we're only going to vote Democrat because they're the only ones who tell us they're doing something for us. They don't do anything for them other than try and get them to be deceived into re-election. But whereas what real people want, it's not a racial issue, it's a class issue, economic issue. They want living wage jobs, they want opportunity to build a business, to be an entrepreneur, or to work hard and get paid enough to pay for all their bills and take care of their family. I mean, it's such a laugh. The Republicans have turned into these globalist communist traitors. Did I say Republicans?
Well,
I meant
points
Democrats.
well made. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yeah, Oberman's lost it. And, you know, there's a lot of talk going around that we need to arrest Trump once he's out of office. Of course, that won't happen, but it's just a further attempt to delegitimize all things Trump. And, you know, this idea that blacks and Latinos are so-called Latinos, that's not a real term if you really look at it, but they're not part of any kind of a coalition. If you've ever been to South America or Central America, the two groups don't get along that well in reality. I'm sorry to say, it's just the truth. And everything we're told is a lie by this media. It's just absolutely stunning.
I think you got it exactly right. And blacks aren't as homogeneous as some would suggest either.
Exactly.
Here again, calling for Tucker Carlson's. I mean, this is absurd. Why would he do this? Ridiculous. Tucker's now telling his audience Trump supporters own 60 to 70% of the guns, and they could take to the street. If they take to the street, blood would flow. Keith Olbermann says this is an overt and unmistakable call for widespread violence and requires the arrest of Tucker Carlson. But it wasn't Tucker who said it. He was reporting what the former chief of staff of Colin Powell, Lawrence Wilkerson, had said. If Trump calls his base to the street with their guns, his base owns something like 60 to 70% of 300 to 400 million guns in America. If they answer that call, all bets are off as to how much blood might flow. Tucker's reporting the news. Leftists, never Trumpers, begin compiling lists of Trump supporters so they can be held accountable. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is anyone archiving these Trump psychophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future? I foresee a decent probability of many deleted tweets, writings, photos in the future. She wants to hold them accountable. Any Republican now promoting rejection of an election or calling to not follow the will of the voters or making baseless allegations of fraud should never serve in office, join a corporate board, find a faculty position, or be accepted in a polite society. We have a list. Unbelievable. But notice she said, see, these are all warranted accusations. The proof is massive and overwhelming. Giuseppe, your thoughts?
Well, Jim, the so-called People's Champion AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is such a propped up fraud. She acts as though she grew up in the hood of the Bronx, man, but in reality, she grew up in the upper middle class, nice, cushy existence of Long Island, and she's just had, you know, her college paid for, Boston College, and has just been inserted into this dialogue. And her and the bizarre bubblehead Ilhan Omar, who married her brother, then married another guy, and now is going to marry her campaign aide. So a woman with powerful desires, and this is the so-called squad that's the leaders of New America. It's, you know, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we're literally living in clown world right now, and I keep thinking more and more that this whole strategy of the deep state with the front man George Soros, this color revolution, is setting up all these lunatics, Olbermann, Ocasio-Cortez, all the other ranting Joy Reid types. And once it's revealed then that it was a stolen election, boom goes the dynamite, and we have the civil war that will destroy this country, and the UN troops rush in, the globalists. We can't have to take over the United States. So I think that's what's coming.
A number of us fear that. Scorpio, your thoughts?
Yes, Giuseppe, that's the scenario that Mike Gaddy keeps talking about. And, he made an excellent point on a show recently, which is that, these people always deal in contingency plans. So if option A doesn't work out, they already have option B ready to go. So that will be the scenario if this fraud is uncovered. Trump will be delegitimized. He stole the election. He's a fascist. He's this, he's that. And they're going to unleash the hounds upon the streets of America. No question about it. And why would Keith Olbermann call for the arrest of Tucker Carlson? Well, I'd say it's probably jealousy, because Tucker Carlson's ratings are off the chart. No one can come close to him right now. And, the other thing I've noticed in some of these clips on the mainstream media, several vote commissioners and vote counters have come out all teary-eyed on camera saying that they've been threatened by militia types and they've had threatening phone calls, and the callers are saying this is what the Second Amendment is for. So they're already sort of positioning an attack on the Second Amendment because these violent and nefarious Trump supporters are threatening the wonderful vote counters that are working to save our democracy.
Well, they can threaten it. Meanwhile, we want to hear from you, pro or con, liveneedtoknow@gmail.com, liveneedtoknow@gmail.com. Here's one commentator. I have the greatest respect for Scorpio and Giuseppe, but after starting to listen to the 11/7 Operation Scorpio, I was taken aback. Instead of constantly repeating resignation and doom, why not present some ideas along the lines of how patriots can organize and resist what's coming? Accepting this fate and this election is not patriotism. Airtime would be better spent with plans, ideas, and organization. For me, it's not over until they put a vaccination in my arm, and upon that refusal, a bullet in my head. It may have changed as the show went on, but I had to stop listening. I could absorb the same misery from the mainstream media if I had a TV. Meanwhile, from another on my blog, along with Dr. Fetzer's statement about Biden's double, please pass the following around. Social media is, of course, censoring any attempt at organizing by we the people. Despicable, but what else would we expect from an ongoing coup against the Republic? All that said, Trump rallies today in all major cities. It's been censored. I mentioned it last night also. Social media is attempting to block this from happening. There's supposed to be widespread Trump rallies and protests against vote fraud. I've done nothing but pay attention to the situation. And here's where we are as of Saturday morning without having to go and surf 50 sites to get there. The watermark story is a probable hoax. However, there were other sting operations, and Biden is hopelessly, irrevocably busted. That's why no winner has been announced, except, of course, now it has. I really don't know where this will all end, but there's such a mountain of fraud this time. It's like trying to contain the aftermath of a nuclear blast. Containment is totally breached. Meanwhile, dancing in the streets. I heard people are out in the streets celebrating election theft. I wonder how many are paid celebrants. Probably some of the same people who are paid to do Antifa and BLM are padding the numbers of celebrants in the streets. Where were all these people at Biden's rallies? Kamala Harris went to Asheville a few weeks ago. Asheville is a liberal haven, but Harris didn't get a dozen people. I guess the fear of COVID goes out the window when you're celebrating stealing an election. How many of the revelers are wearing masks? And even if they are, they sure as hell aren't social distancing. Meanwhile, I remind everyone, if you want to get your mind wrapped around conspiracies, we're living through a couple of the greatest in history, the voting fraud here and also the coronavirus. Check out False Flags and Conspiracies 2020, December 5th and 6th. Check it out at falseflagconspiracies2020.com. Meanwhile, final thoughts, Giuseppe.
Well, Jim, we want to thank all our viewers for sharing their opinions. Of course, we respect your right to have your own opinion. That's great. Let us know. Keep it coming. And that year, false flag and conspiracies is going to be remarkable. Looking at that, just a heavy hitter list of presenters, it's going to be really worth triple that money. Hopefully people sign up and pay early for both days. It's quite a great discount. And finally, to kind of sum up the various opinions we received in those letters and throughout the stories, people have to understand that the globalists have over a century of exquisite research and training in controlling the human mind. And what we are now experiencing is an intense, effective psychological operation intent on destroying the sovereign public United States. And sadly, it's working. And, God bless anyone who wants to take the streets. I hope you're successful. I don't think that enough people will. And so, but maybe they will. I hope so. I advocate people to not go along with this. And I certainly agree with that gentleman that I will never wear a mask. I will never take a vaccine. And I'll take a few of these Satanists with me before they bring me and my beautiful war wolves down.
Scorpio, your final thoughts.
Yeah, great points, Giuseppe. Yeah, I certainly respect the listeners' criticisms, but I have to just sort of call them like I see them. And if he had stuck around for hour 3, we did spend the entire hour with Steve from UK talking about pretty out of the box thinking and ways that people are going to have to move forward to create their own reality. And I hope I'm wrong that about the outcome of this. I really do. I just have to call them like I see them. And as far as Beverly's comments, those were excellent. I thought the same thing. I think there's a lot of paid celebrants, just like there's paid protesters. So that was an excellent observation. The whole thing just seems strange. Like, yay, Joe Biden's going to win. We're going to be forced to wear a mask. Woo! I'm so happy. Yeah. So it looked pretty fake, and I totally agree with that. And so maybe the other listener could go through and listen to hour 3, because we did spend a lot of time talking about what to do in the future.
Well, this is Jim Fetzer in Madison, Wisconsin, thanking Giuseppe Vafangulo from the District of Criminals and David Scorpio from the exotic land of Ecuador. I, too, call him as I see him. Too much pessimism here. Donald Trump is going to pull this off. He's known all these years it was coming. I am convinced he set a trap that he's going to wind up winning the election, and he's going to deal very severely with those who have now exposed themselves. He's been executing the art of war and doing so as brilliantly as he has in the past, the art of the deal. Stand by, because more news is coming, and we'll be right here to give you what you need to know. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow.